is Bob Lewis, and I want to talk to you today just a little bit about the Glock 23 pistol. Now this is a Gen 3, and I do want to say that my training is on the design, function, and repair of firearms. So in that training you learn how a system works and why it's built the way it is. And sometimes manufacturers deviate from those basic principles for whatever reason. Maybe it's just the way they have to do it to make it different than somebody else did. But basically, the parts within the gun have to function pretty much the same way in order for the gun to fire and function correctly. Now this is a Gen 3 that I brought from California when I moved my business from there to here. And it's very, very popular. I mean, Glock is a very good, reliable, 60+% of the law enforcement community actually use Glocks in their service models. And they're pretty easy to take apart. Everybody can do it. You don't need any tools. Glock is a great gun. There's some things though that I don't understand why the engineers did, because they really violate some of the basic principles of extractors when you think about it. And I've got a drawing here that I want to show you, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few moments to just talk to you a little bit about the extractor angles in a Glock and ask the simple question, why did they design the gun that way? I don't have an answer for that. Why didn't they just do some other things that I'm going to suggest during this video? Alright, I've got my Glock 23 right here on the bench, and I'm going to go ahead and break it down. I'm just simply going to field strip it, take off the slide in the barrel. I'm going to talk to you about the extractor today, and I've got a primitive drawing really of what I'm going to discuss, and hopefully it makes sense to you. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment or ask me, or we can have a discussion about why Glock designs their pistols the way they do. I have no idea, to be honest with you. As I said before, there's some basic principles involved in how an extractor angle is cut and why it's cut that way for not only function but also reliability of extraction, and so pretty important. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to check the gun is unloaded. Of course, on a Glock like this, you pull the trigger, grab the slide, drop down the ears, and let the slide come right off. Now, you know as well as anyone else that has a Glock, you go ahead and remove the recoil spring, and I'm going to go ahead and slip out the barrel, and now you've got the gun essentially field stripped. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the trigger later, and we won't get into that right now. But what I want to look at, and I don't know if you can see this again or not, because I don't have my other camera set up. I'm just using my phone actually, so this is going to be a real primitive video. But I want to talk to you about really the extractor angle in a Glock. And so I'm going to move up just a little bit closer so maybe you can see this. So as you can see, the extractor comes along this area and it's raised up. It's above center really here, and it actually drops down to just below center on the breech face. And this extractor has been modified. I've already fixed this extractor so that it actually supports the case rather than having the striker that you can see protruding, because I pulled the trigger. You can see that the striker is protruding out of the breech face. Hopefully you can see that. And that's what supports the back of the case during extraction. Now, why Glock does that, I don't have a clue. It just doesn't make any sense to me, and I'll show you on a drawing here in a few seconds. But what I've done is I've actually taken and I've lost my loaded chamber indicator, because after all, I know my gun is loaded. All guns are loaded. That's the way they're to be treated. They're always loaded all of the time. And you always make sure that they're unloaded prior to doing any work on your gun at all. Now, everybody should know that. But what I've done is I've actually brought in this extractor in further, because I've made a positive angle on the extractor rather than the negative angle that came with. So what am I talking about? I'm going to go ahead and bring up this rather primitive drawing, and I'm not an artist and I don't claim to be, but it gives you an idea of what originally, and this is not to scale obviously, but this is negative. So negative means, of course the drawing I could have made it actually worse, but the drawing is, you see how the extractor on a Glock comes up on this side and then drops down just below the striker. Well, actually the angle on the end of your extractor from the factory is negative, and negative means that it goes this way. It doesn't support the case, which is positive, this way. It's negative. And they probably do that because an engineer said, hey, we need to be able to get that case to slide up into the breech face without any interference And so what we'll do is we'll put a negative angle here. Well, it's not supposed to have a negative angle. So the job of the extractor is remove the case from the chamber and to hold on to it long enough that the ejector can hit it and throw it from the gun. That's pretty basic, really. So we have a negative angle here. So what I've done is actually change this angle to positive. So again, positive supports the case. Now, of course, this is not a very good drawing, I get that. But this is the case, and this is just behind all of that. That's where the striker would be. And I know that the striker is rectangular and it comes to kind of a rectangle point and all that, but I just put a dot there to illustrate what we're doing. And so now this is positive, so it actually, and this is not to scale, actually that should come around right about here. But you have about 15 to 25,000 spring out on this particular extractor right now, about a pound or so of pressure holding that case in against the breech wall on the other side. And so with this positive extractor angle, this case is going to be supported by the extractor, which is what the gun is supposed to have in the first place. I don't need the striker sticking out of the breech face to keep my case in there until the ejector can get to it and send it on out. So I guess my question is, why didn't Glock on their slide just simply, maybe they had to be different for some reason, I don't know, I'm asking the question. I get the whole negative thing so that the case feeds up, but you can do that with a regular cut extractor. On the positive side, you just take a little bit off of that corner right there, and it's not going to have a sharp point on it. It's going to allow that extractor to spring out, allow the case to go up underneath and be supported by that while it's chambering the round and also during extraction. What they've done is they put the extractor up higher in the port, and I get it, they have the extractor plunger and spring on the inside here, of course plastic to plastic, metal to metal. If you ever take one of those out, that's the way you want to put it back in. But why didn't they move that channel down lower and have the extractor come in through here? They already had the ejection port right here. Maybe they needed that strength, that extra strength. They lowered the port here. But nothing's to say that they couldn't have lowered this just a little bit more, or not even worried about it at all, had the extractor come right along the bottom and come in and have a positive angle on the case and support the case by just lowering the channel and lowering the position of the extractor, creating more surface area up on top here by just lowering that down. And in a sense, according to this drawing, just having a straight extractor that's turned in to pick up the case and to hold that case in place with a positive angle on that extractor. Then you would not need the striker protruding out of the breech face in order to ensure that the case didn't fall off. Just a question I have. So the extractor angle is not correct. I mean, that's just the bottom line. That's just what I'm saying. What does an extractor do? It extracts the cartridge. Now I realize extractors have different angles on them depending on what type of gun they're in and how they work. I mean, I get that. But the idea is all extractors support the case until it can be ejected and create reliable functioning of the firearm. If that case falls off the extractor prior to being ejected, it jams up and you get a bind on the inside. If the extractor is not cut correctly and there's not the correct tension on it, you get a 3-point bind in the chamber. And a 3-point bind means that the bottom of the case is actually binding or hitting here. The nose of the bullet is actually hitting here, and the extractor, because of the tension on that extractor is not allowing the case to come up into the extractor and to be pushed by the slide of the breech face back into the chamber. So that's how it works. So extractor is a critical component to reliability.